Hello and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mignot, and this is all part of our kind of 29 Days of Magic series, where basically I interview a Black woman a day and we share her story. And it's for no other reason than like, why not do this? So today's episode, I'm super delighted to have Rozie Kennedy, who's the creator of the Brave Sis Project. I want to talk about what she's up to, how she started, and everything in between. It's going to be a great conversation. Take a listen. Hey, Rozie.
Hello, hello.
So the podcast has a very simple format. The first question is always the same. And I'm curious to see what your answer is going to be. So Rozie, what was your first job?
My first job was when I was 18. I worked as an intern for Needham, Harper, and Steers, that's dating me, but that was a New York City advertising agency. And I was sort of like a copy person and a traffic person while still in high school. So that was my
yeah. I've seen that if you're still in high school and working for an advertising agency, isn't that technically illegal?
Well, it was an internship, but it did turn into a summer job after I graduated. And I was very fortunate as a young woman. I had an opportunity to attend an extraordinary girls' private school in New York. So, there was some, even though I'm a Black girl from, Manhattan and didn't have any personal connectivity to that world, I got connected through school. And so it was a nice start. It was a nice way to learn about the grown-up world of the workplace, and also in a creative intersection, which has always been a big part of what drives me in life. So it was pretty cool.
Pretty awesome. All right. So you're already at a young age killing it. How do we get to this Brave Sis movement? What was that career journey like?
Oh my heavens. So, Laura, like many people, people used to always say, can women have it all? And I would say, I believe so, but just not at once, right? And so for a long time, I believed in this book called Sequencing, which was just like, live the part of life you're in now and live it fully and don't worry about the rest. So, I lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico for 10 years. And raised, my children, my daughters, and was just a mom and scraping by, doing whatever I could. That's an understatement. I started 3 nonprofits and I worked across a whole mess of different sectors, but it was never really like career work. It was like all of the verve and energy of career work, but not really the stability or the title or the income, as is often the case. When I moved to the Bay Area 12 years ago, I was like, I had a big executive job for performing arts organization, really exciting. That led to a pathway in fundraising, which, while I have the right temperament, it's a really, really bad job, I feel, for many women of color, insofar as you're always in a position of having to solicit people and charm them and entertain them to get them to pay for your mission. So it's actually can really intersect poorly with a lot of the trauma that we hold just historically and societally, right? That's what led to Brave Sis. I had a very, very negative experience working for a foundation. I left it and I was a broken person, and I was really in a very low place for several months, good part of a year. And I woke up one morning and I was like, enough of that. Got to take accountability for myself, make promises I can keep. I'm going to get a journal. I'm going to journal and day plan and do all of this. Laura, I started looking at what was on the market and I was so depressed. There were like the white women, sort of like ponies and unicorn and like, flowery type of things that just didn't speak to me at all. And then there were like the type A male ones, like, you can crush it, you can do it. And it was like, Tony Robbins and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I was like, well, I don't want them in any part of my life, much less my most intimate feelings about my growth and, journey. And then the Black girl ones were like really beautiful on the cover, you go girl, you got this. And then inside as generic and plain and like such a disappointment. And so similarly to what we just said, I was like, well, if it's not there, I guess I have to make it. So I was like, all right, I'll make a journal. I'll make 500 copies. I'll send it to my friends, whatever. On Christmas morning, 2019, I woke up, sometimes you wake up and you feel a presence in the room with you. And I woke up that Christmas morning and the presence was saying, tell my story. It's like I bolted out of bed. I was like, who was that? And I was like, it was a foremother. And so I started researching women, like just, Black women initially in history. And I started, the usual suspects, Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday. A friend of mine said, Rosie, if you want to include those famous people, you have to clear rights with their agents. And I was like, well, I'm not doing that. I've subsequently learned it's not as strict as I thought, but I didn't have any money, Laura. I was, bootstrapping this. So it's like, I'm not going to be paying anyone anything. I can't. And I said, you know what? I'm going to focus on women that no one really knows. And that just opened up into this entire new way of doing the work. I have a lot of friends who are Latina, Native American, Hawaiian, Indigenous, Asian American, and white women who are very close in my life. So it became very clear to me that I wanted the book to be about a constellation of women of color. So Black women, brown women, Asian women, Indigenous women, who made a big difference in history and who, for reasons both known and the sad truths we know, and also sometimes accidents of history, aren't very well known to us. And the idea was like, if I center the day planner with quotes from them, stories of their lives, coloring page portraits of them that people can coloring is very meditative and it helps you with, clearing your thoughts, that all of this would be sort of like a circle of encouragement for us as we go through whatever we go through in our days and weeks and years, to remember that some women came before us who were brave, who did amazing things, and we can stand on their shoulders. So that's for the women of color. We can see each other across identities, which is really important in this polarized moment that's being manufactured and pushed upon us. It's also really, really important for white women because they go into this intimate space with women of color that they never knew. It decenters the default whiteness narrative about who gets to own wellness, who gets to own history, who gets to own feminism, who gets to own all of it. And it just really creates this wonderful vehicle and platform for us to really see and celebrate ourselves first, and then each other. And hopefully, my big aspiration is, as more people engage with the project and, the social media gets more intense and all of that, that we can start figuring out ways to make a difference in our communities and world.
Amazing. Oh, that's so awesome. So what's been the response?
So the first year that I started, I was like, when I get an idea, I'm like a dog with a bone. And so I just started working on it. And pandemic came upon us all, as we know. And let's see what happened. I did a Kickstarter in 2020, and it was, June of 2020. So lots of people were thinking about how to do right by Black people.
Right.
And so the Kickstarter came in at $25,000. It came in at 300% funded. And I was like, oh, well, this is real. So I printed 3,000 books. I launched the LLC. I did all that good stuff. We had a pandemic, and so there were no ways to do like book fairs or house party events or anything. So I had to hustle. I was able to, sell 2,000 of the books in 8 different countries. And then I gave away the other 1,000 to like nonprofit groups, including everything from like Hawaiian Black professionals in Hawaii to women coming out of the carceral system in Arizona to like low income women across race and culture in Iowa who used the journal as an accountability journal for them for learning how to budget and manage their finances. So it was very, very gratifying. The best thing that happened, Laura, was a friend of mine worked for a publishing house in New York, and she saw it and she showed it to the actual publisher at Workman Press. And they were like, we love this concept. And I actually have a Brave Sis adult activity book coming out in March of 2023 on Workman Press with a professional illustrator who's really well known in a national marketing and PR campaign. And it's just astonishing that from this little visitation in the middle of the morning to being a published author next year, it's been an incredible journey. And I also did publish I self-published the second journal for 2022, which is, out now. And not only did we have COVID to deal with in the pandemic, meaning there were no events and hard to like create momentum. I ordered the books in July and they got here on December 21st because of the global shipping. Yeah, the global shipping crisis really did us in. So I have a lot of inventory left because obviously I sort of missed the holiday period. So I'm, doing engagements now, but I also have a very busy day job. So I've got to balance it. As you know, we do all the things we do because we are called to do them. But I have to balance all of that as well. But I love it. I'm having a really good time. And last night I was at an event and all the women told me I have to start a podcast. So I may be coming to you for tips on how to do that.
Happy to share some good old tips.
Thanks.
That's amazing. So, when building all of this and the career that you've had, what do you think you'd tell 25-year-old Rozie?
What would I say to 25-year-old me?
Yeah.
Oh man, when I was 25, I was living in Paris. I was married. I had just gotten married to my then first husband. I was trying to be a scholar. I was doing a master's degree in French Caribbean women's literature at the Sorbonne. I've had a very kind of atypical, crazy, outside the box life. And I thought I was going to be living in Paris forever. So what I would say to her is, don't be too fixated on what you think your future is going to be, because the only part of my life then that is consistent to this day is that I'm working my passion project is adjacent to women of diaspora, right? And that's with a gigantic D because it encompasses not just Black, African, Caribbean diaspora, but also Asian, Indigenous, and Latinx diasporas. So that's the only thing that I have that's congruent with the person I was then. But you know what, Laura? That desire I had to study literature and the openness about different people's stories and lives and perspectives and lessons for us, I see the through line now, 30 years later, or however many more, 35 years later. Good Lord, almost, 38 years later. I am just thinking about my age. 35. I really do see the through point. Yeah, I do see the through point. And that's kind of humbling and beautiful. It's like who we are oftentimes is who we always were. It's just what's around us that gets in the way from who we get to be, And I've been finding that really remarkable and exciting to think about.
That's amazing and some fantastic advice.
Mm.
So you've got all this going on. You've decided to just run it with Brave Sis and make it happen, and all this is going on. What in the world do you do for yourself? What do you do for your self-care?
That is a great question. I had been an avid member of a dance community in San Francisco until the pandemic hit and everything went on to Zoom. And it's like a fusion dance, very not very anchored in like shaking your butt, really. I don't think of another way to say it. It's not so much the technique as the feeling and the energy and the drive, and just really great music. And it was a huge part of my life for 8 years. It was what kept me sane. And then when the pandemic hit and it went online, that changed a little. And then the teacher started moving on to different things and stopped teaching. And I was just broken. I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I just recently found a Ghanaian woman who has an online African dance and dance fitness program, and they've got travel engaged with it and everything. I've been doing the challenge and I love it so much, and I'm feeling fitter, but I also love it because the two women, she's 63, so she's like a role model, and her daughter they're like these dark-skinned Black women moving so beautifully and I just am resonating with it so much. So I'm loving this dance. I think I might even do the certification this summer just for the joy of doing it, because I need to move my body and be in music. So that's one thing I do for fun. I am a Warriors fan, and that's a good thing to be these days. It wasn't so good the last 2 years. It was very heartbreaking. But, my husband and I do often just sit on the couch with a glass of wine and watch the game. I enjoy that. I'm taking more time to read now that I've got an empty nest. My daughters are off in New York City, living their college and post-college, starting that adulting journey. I like to read a lot. And I also am a huge Rafael Nadal fan in tennis. So I had a beautiful weekend. I had a beautiful but sleepless weekend last weekend with the Australian Open.
Did you see it all?
I didn't watch the whole thing because I'm too nervous. And I kept waking up every 45 minutes and checking the score. And when it was even at 2, I woke my husband and he says, well, we got to watch. And I mustered all of my courage and watched in real time. And it was a great, satisfying payoff, but extremely nerve-wracking. I don't know how sports fans who are on it every day, how they live, because it's just too stress inducing. But and hopefully, Laura, when we can gather safely again, I've got a lot of pent-up desire to see a lot of my friends and just be in the presence of people again, which is always my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, it's we're getting there. I'm a full believer that we are getting there, and as creating events and experience is my job.
I hear you.
It is.
I hear you, and I hold that in. The intentionality for you as well. The funny thing is, as we're recording today, a week from now, I was supposed to be doing my initial Brave Sis retreat in Costa Rica. It was going to be a week. I had the place, I had the whole itinerary, a week of exploring, learning about history, journaling, doing creative stuff, dancing, going to the beach and excursions, bringing a local woman in who was going to show folks different medicinal herbs and creating this whole really deep inclusive sisterhood experience. And it was going to be next week. And of course I had to cancel it because of Delta back in the fall. And it's just ironic that, it's so close yet elusive, but we'll get there. We will all get back to those things again soon.
We will, and it will be for a brighter thing.
Yeah.
So, and that's the whole point about all of this, is that we will get there, it will be really good, and it will be much more meaningful, because it's one of the things I was said in an article recently. It'll be what makes me want to leave my house. And I'm not gonna just pick up any old random thing. It's gonna be things that matter. And that's when that the connections will be meaningful, and everything else will be meaningful as well, because that's what you're choosing to be a part of.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we've all just become much more, well, many of us have become much more clear about what's essential in life and what's just noise and chatter. And that's both in terms of the things you do, the people you're with, the things you commit to. During the pandemic, we downsized because our daughters came home for 2 weeks for spring break in March of 2020, which turned into 65 weeks, but who's counting?
You're like, why are you here?
But who's counting, right? And then, one did classes online to continue college, and the other took the year off and pieced out to an organic coffee farm on the Big Island of Hawaii. She found a program where you can work for free and get housed for free. So she was like, bye.
Bye. See you in Hawaii.
Yeah, we're carry on, young adventurer, right? But in the middle of that, they finally, when things eased up a bit, they did move back to New York, and my husband and I downsized from 2,400 square foot to just over 900. So we got rid of a ton of stuff. And that felt like the metaphor of these times, what is really essential and what is just, extraneous noise. And I hope when we start to recommit to things in life that we carry some of that sense of declutter and focus on what really is important and who we're with and what we're experiencing, and not just barreling through without thought, so that's my sort of holy hope for us all as we reemerge from this moment.
Same here. And then last question, do you have a give and or an ask of the audience?
I do have a give. I would be extremely happy to, I would be happy to give a copy of the book to a listener if you would so like to do that. I know sometimes that's a really heavy lift. Um, and I guess the other ask and give kind of go together. I would love for people to check out Brave Sis Project on Instagram, follow, amplify. I'm going to be doing a lot. It's a dated book. So obviously I want people to go out and buy it. And there's a Black History Month sale going on and all of that good stuff. But, as we get further in the year, people are like, well, the year's half done. So, there's going to be a lot more interest happening on the social media, and I'd love to boost that up a little bit. And then I have a second social media site called Vindication Gal, VINDICATIONGAL. And what I've done there is I try to take sentences and phrases of microaggressions and stupidity, and those can be racial, age, gender, whatever, and I turn them into pretty art posts. So it's like dismantling stupidity with art. And I would love for people, it's just small. I do it when I feel it, but I would love for more women particularly to engage with that site and to message me like outrageously obnoxious, clueless things people said, because I really enjoy turning those into little medallion posts for social media. It's very cathartic. And I think it can be, cathartic for us all. And it really costs nothing. It's really simple. So I would just love for folks to engage both social platforms. That would be really terrific.
That's fantastic. We'll put all the details in the show notes so folks can find you and do all of that. I think those are fantastic ideas. I mean, Rosie, you're just a delight and awesome. And I'm so excited to get to know you more. And thank you so much for being part of the podcast and 29 Days of Magic.
I am so incredibly gratified. I'm so happy to know you now. And can I say I'm happy to the white woman friend who connected us, because there is a lot of dope women out there, and I appreciate the way our networks continue to weave closer, more and more closely together. So I'm just thrilled. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. And that is our show.